Hello. This is an oil-filled welder. It's a type of welder I've been looking for a long time. I've been quite keen to get my hands on one. It's basically just a great big copper transformer which is immersed in a bath of oil, and that keeps it cool when it's in operation. It's as simple as a welder can be, really. We'll have a quick look at the controls in a minute. But I wanted one of these because the generator power that I have here, in the workshop, most of the power is solar powered and it comes through an inverter and it's nice and clean. But when I need to do heavy stuff, like using the big angle grinder or using welding equipment, I need to fire up the diesel generator, and the output from the diesel generator is rough, let's say. Sensitive electronics like you find in an inverter welder aren't happy with that at all. Things like this are much more resilient then, and these things should last forever. I say should because the actual one that I got had some issues, which we'll get to in a bit. It's an arc welder then, which means it's similar in principle of operation to my inverter welder. It uses the same sort of lead, so you have a lead that terminates in an earth clamp and one that has an electrode holder. The earth lead goes on here, and then you've got a choice of lives. You've got a 80 volt or a 50 volt, and that's used for when you want to use, say, the 60 or 50 amps on down in the lower part of the range here. It helps if you have a higher voltage. It helps in actually striking that arc to begin with. When you're up at the higher end of the scale, you need to use the 50 volt setting, and that will give you the full maximum, which on here is 180 amps. And 180 amps of welding current should be able to burn something like this 4mm rod that's in here and do some fairly hefty welding. You've got a massive great big selector here, and when I'm moving that about, I'm actually pulling a big metal plate out of some copper contacts below it, and then it drops into different copper contacts to give me different tappings off of the great big copper coil which is inside. You'll see all that in a moment. They do have a couple of disadvantages. One is that they're very heavy. This is filled with oil, and right, I can get it off the ground, but only just. So that's quite a lot. I'm guessing that's about 100 kilos or so. Yeah. I wouldn't want to lift it again. The other disadvantage is that they're quite inefficient, but I have a plan for that, which you'll see later in the video. I've been looking on eBay then for quite a long time for one of these. The trouble is, because they're so heavy, you need to find one that's near to home, within sensible driving distance. There's quite a few out there, and they're reasonably cheap for what they are. This particular one, I won in an auction for £25, and it was nowhere near me, but fortunately it was near Mark. He went out to get it, and that's when the trouble started. It was leaking oil, and it had blatantly been left outside for a great many years, and I think the rain had just got in through these top bits. Water had got in the oil, water had rotted out through the bottom of it, and when they loaded it into Mark's van, by the time he got home with it, there was oil everywhere. And he wasn't best pleased. Nonetheless, he insisted on cleaning it up and bringing it all the way to me, for which I'm very grateful. And you'll see what it looked like when we got it in the workshop and we started to strip it down. Inside it, the amount of water that got in had actually turned the oil into some kind of like thick emulsion stuff. There was no hope of actually firing the thing up. If we'd plugged it in, it would have just shorted out straight away, and that would have been the end of that. Or, well, it would have blown a fuse in reality. Things were looking a bit bleak then for the new arrival, but after Mark had gone home, I remembered something he'd said to me during one of the other videos I'd made.
Nothing wrong with washing it in some hot soapy water, thoroughly dried out. It comes out looking good as new. Awesome.
And I thought, well, it might not be hot, but soapy water, I can do that. I've got this thing wired in on a temporary bit of lightweight flex. The welder is sat obviously out of the oil and it's sat on a plastic box. I'm going to plug it in and see what happens. First I'm going to go and turn on the generator and switch the workshop over to generator power. Simply because the generator is actually cheaper than the inverter, so if I'm going to blow something up, should be that. I expect the inrush current for this welder will probably pop the fuse before anything else happens. Right, generator's on. Let's flip the power over. That's humming away a treat. Nothing's popped, so good. 89 from the 80 terminal, and yeah, 58 or so from the 50 terminal, which is about right, given that I bet this is too high coming in. So this, yeah, the incoming AC is at 250 at the moment. Well, so far that's one of them. 480 watts, just sitting there. That's amazing. Still climbing, I guess it's warming up. Crikey, we're at 1,000 watts now. That's bubbling merrily, isn't it? Right, we peaked at 1100 over there. And now it's dropping. Yeah, it's dropping quite sharply. So I guess the windings are drying out. A lot less heat coming off of the windings now, I think. Of course, my first instinct when that started to happen was to turn it off. But I think not turning it off was the right move. That was exciting. I don't know if it's water from the jet washing that's been driven out, or whether it's water that was in that horrible oil that was, yeah, more of an emulsion than an oil that's being driven out. I did look up the oil and it's not actually that terrible. It doesn't have any PCBs in it or anything particularly deadly. I still haven't done any welding with it, but it's showing the right voltage at the right terminals. Everything is working. I'm amazed. I suppose the next thing is then to put some heavier duty wiring on it, sort out some welding leads and have a go. Yeah, I think I'll try that before I go actually buying any oil and immersing the thing properly. I've set it at 60 amps. On the earth side, I've just got an old jump lead just for now. Right, let's get the power on. Okay, the welding set's on. And it's drawing 105 amps on standby. No, it's not. It's drawing 105 watts on standby. Right, and we're set at 60 amps. Let's see if this thing does anything interesting. Obviously being careful not to poke my hands in there. Let's see if it strikes. Well, just about. That was pretty feeble. Yeah. That's 100. Let's try again. But that's yeah, it's proof of concept, I guess you'd call that, and yeah, I'm quite happy with that. Time to move on to the next stage. So next thing, I've got to weld up the leaking tank and splash out some serious money on some fancy oil. Inside the tank, just there, that's the pinhole. That's where all the oil disappeared. It's good to have a little gap around it, somewhere for the MIG wire to go in. I was tempted, very tempted, to weld this up using the actual welder that I'm fixing, but I'm not going to, because that would be daft. Right then, I had this filled up to the brim with water and I left it there for 2 days without any trace of leak at all, so that's great. It's got a bit orange, but I'm not too troubled about that. You might be able to see in there the repair section. Just now then, a van turned up and a chap gave me this lot. I don't really know exactly how much oil I need. I've read like 3 or 4 completely different numbers on that, so I'm just going to try it with that. I think transform oil is the right stuff. I have read in quite a few places you can substitute it with all sorts, even chip oil, but yeah, I've not actually come across anyone definitely saying it. It just seems to be the usual internet bollocks. So I'm going to go with the actual specified product, I think. Anyway, let's chuck it all together. I can see there's oil on top of here. Yes, I think that will do. So it covers both the coils. The selectors aren't going to be sat in oil, but I don't think that matters too much. Partway through wiring it then to the mains, and I just thought I'd show this bit just in case there's anyone out there happens to have one of these and wonders how it's wired up. So this terminal cover comes off, and under it says 415, 440, E referring to the middle one, 240 and 0. So what that means is for me, I'm going to use 0, that'll be neutral, 240 is the live, and the middle one is always earth. I put a nice beefy power cable on it and a 16 amp plug, So then we'll go off to the generator. What I've done here is taken the original brass connectors and I've just connected them to a DIN socket so I can use my existing welding cables. Yeah, I can hear it humming away, so something's happening. As you can see there, it's a really nice clean weld, but it's not penetrating much. That's sitting way too proud on top of this surface. For that ampage, that should be sat much deeper than that. So it's a good start. It's all working nicely. The fault now is with the power supply, by which I mean the generator. And I think I can do something about that. One of the drawbacks with these welders is the power correction factor. The power factor rather on these is about 0.6 from what I've been reading, which is very low. What that means is, in practical terms, is not all the energy that the generator is able to produce is being pumped through the welder. I'm going to make another video where I experiment with this thing. This is a giant capacitor. This is a power factor correction capacitor, and if I can get this working with this properly, it'll make this more efficient effectively, and I'll do a follow-up video showing how I did that. I think when you're running off a main supply, it's nowhere near as critical and people don't tend to worry so much about power factor, but for now I'm rather happy with that. That's all worked out rather nicely. When this first turned up, I mean, when Mark showed me the picture of what it looked like when he collected it, I thought, oh God. I think if I'd gone to collect it, I may well have just left it there. It looked in such terrible condition. Then when I found all the water that was in with the oil, it was even more depressing, and yeah, but it's come back to life. So it just goes to show that sometimes it's worth just having a go with these things, and they are resurrectable. So yeah, I wouldn't call this a restoration, a resurrection maybe, but it's taken something that was definitely scrap and now it works again, and good for another, oh well, however old this is, it will last the same again, I'm sure. I've got no real way of telling how old this is, but if you notice here on the address, we've got Pickhill, Firsk, Yorks, Cinderby, and then the phone number is 3 numbers long, and that suggests to me that it's rather an old machine. Yeah, 1950s would be my guess, but it is just a guess. But with the tiniest bit of maintenance, these things will last literally forever, and that's how I like my engineering. Anyway, hope that's been of interest. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.